Well, it looks like I lied, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologize for lying, and I'm sorry if that ruins your trust in me or that makes you look at me a whole lot different. I don't want to be viewed as a liar, but we just had a fun weekend in conference championship weekend. I did not like that I repeated weekend back-to-back times, but you know what? We move. We were not expecting to do that, so we're not expecting to do anything smart in the intro. But before we get into what we're going to talk about, make sure to check out all the links down below. Make sure to check out the blog post as well for more in-depth analysis for each player within the top 10. And before we get into that, and before we get into the talking points of the video itself, we have to go over the breaking news. I guess it's not really breaking news anymore at this point, but the big news surrounding this quarterback draft class with Garrett Nussmeier announcing he's going back to LSU. That is a very, very big move because Garrett Nussmeier was a fringe, depending on who you ask, first-round possibility. I'm not saying he was a guaranteed first-round pick or that he was going to be a top 10 pick or something, but there was a chance that Garrett Nussmeier could have wound up in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. But with Bryce Underwood decommitting from LSU and taking that massive NIL deal up at Michigan, that left LSU in a very precarious situation without a starting quarterback for next season. Because if you're paying that kind of money for a player like Bryce Underwood, you would kind of expect him to go win week one and be the unquestioned starter. But with him leaving, that opens up 1,000 different possibilities had Garrett Nussmeier decided to go to the NFL as well. But with him coming back, that gives him another year to develop. And I liked what I saw for the most part from Nussmeier this season. I mean, we've talked about it ad nauseum 1,000 freaking times about how anticipatory that he is throwing the football. You see numerous throws that he's had throughout the course of the season, leading receivers when they're behind the defensive back when he lets go of the ball. His pocket awareness is very, very impressive as well. It's not just that the offensive line's played great, and they have played well. They have some good players on the offensive line. Jones and Campbell at the tackle spots are very, very solid pieces. Campbell will probably end up being a top 10 pick in next year's draft, or this coming year's draft, I should say. But Nussmeier's ability to slide around the pocket, to roll out to either side of the field and make throws on the move, though he's not necessarily the greatest athlete of all time, with plus arm strength as well, was very, very nice to see. He can put the ball in a lot of very impressive windows, very small windows he can fit the ball through. Now, he can get a little bit turnover happy at times. There have been times throughout the course of the season where you see him make one turnover and then there's going to be another one shortly following that. He had some fumbles throughout the season. Obviously, he had a few games where he had multiple interceptions, but I think for the most part, there were a lot of positives to take away from him this season, and I'm excited to see how he continues to develop going into next year. I don't know if he's going to enter the season as the draft's number one prospect, but he will definitely be within that top 4, at least top 5 spot for the upcoming draft class, because if you look at that draft class next year, the main guy will be Arch Manning. There was some rumblings as well with Quinn Ewers possibly entering the transfer portal because Texas wants to see what they have in Arch Manning, or just ready to start the Arch Manning era at Texas, I guess you could say. So Quinn Ewers could be in that conversation. Nico from Tennessee will definitely be in and around that conversation as well. Like, there's some decent quarterbacks around next year's draft, for next year's draft class. There will be some more guys in this year's class that will decide to go back to college for another year or decide to enter the transfer portal. Like, remember last year, Cam Ward, he technically entered the draft, but then he went back into the transfer portal and ended up transferring down to Miami, where he ended up winning the Davey O'Brien Award and is now considered one of the top prospects in this coming year's draft. So again, I'm excited to see what Nussmeier is going to do this upcoming season. It sucks to see him not be available in this draft process, but if you can build on the success that you had this year, I know as a team, LSU wasn't necessarily the greatest, and when they had that moment to kind of punch through, I guess you could say, they fell to A&M, then they fell to Alabama, then they fell to Florida. Like, there were some questionable, not very fun games in there for LSU, but I think Nussmeier can definitely build on what he did this year and go into next year and potentially end up, I'm not saying it's going to be like a smack dab guarantee that he's the number one guy, but he could very well end up being that number one guy for next year's class. So now that he's out of the picture, that has drastically adjusted some of the players in this draft class. And we were planning on making a blog post and a YouTube video prior to him deciding to go back to LSU, but that just added another reason for us to eventually release another thing. Because again, like I said last week, that was supposed to be the final quarterback blog post of the 2024 season, or the 2024 calendar year, I guess I should say. Because after the bowl games, we were thinking about going through each bowl game for each of these top quarterbacks in the draft class and go like, this is why this guy's where he is, this is that, all that stuff, because it's a lot, the last game that we remember them playing. So I was thinking about doing that as well, but this conference championship weekend, again, we had some matchups with some top-tier quarterback options. We had the Georgia-Texas game with Quinn Ewers taking on Carson Beck for a half. And then we had the Big Ten championship game. Drew Aller was in there. Dylan Gabriel. We had the ACC championship game with Cade Klubnik in there, who had a very solid game and a very solid year that kind of just got swept under the rug a little bit. I don't even think I've been as fair to Cade Klubnik as I probably should have been. We've talked about him, obviously, in regards to the honorable mention section. He comes in the honorable mention section here as well for this week. But he has put forth a very, very solid season as Clemson won yet another ACC title. If you look at his numbers from this season, well, even just look at the game itself against SMU in that championship game, 262 yards, 4 touchdowns. Also had 21 yards on the ground as well. For the season, 3,300 yards, 33 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions, with also 458 yards rushing and 7 touchdowns there as well. Again, Cade Klubnik put up a very quiet, because I don't think a lot of people really talked about Cade Klubnik too often. Again, I'm guilty of that as well. I'm not saying that I'm free of guilt here. I'm definitely guilty in this. But I don't think he's really been talked about as much. But he has put forth another solid season, or a solid season, I guess I should say, for Clemson. Other players in the honorable mention section, we have Will Howard, obviously did not play after the loss to Michigan. And with Garrett Nussmeier not being in the top 10, that obviously opened up another spot in the honorable mention section as well, because we had to move some players around. But Kevin Jennings from SMU put forth a very solid season. But in the game against Clemson, 304 yards, 3 touchdowns, did throw a pick, but also had a rushing touchdown in a 34-31 loss, and replacing Preston Stone as the starter, who just entered the transfer portal, actually. Kevin Jennings, 3,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, 8 picks, with 379 yards on the ground with 5 touchdowns there as well. Very solid season. Very solid season. Again, Preston Stone was a fairly well-thought-of quarterback at SMU. I'm not necessarily saying he was like a top 10 draft prospect or something, but a lot of people liked Preston Stone. I liked Preston Stone to a certain extent, but Jennings coming in, putting forth a solid effort, a very good effort, with SMU finishing the regular season 11-1, a trip to the ACC championship game, a trip to the college football playoff. Like, This is a very solid season. I think he deserved a spot in the honorable mention section for this week. We have Haynes King in there as well from Georgia Tech after that very good game against Georgia a week ago. He still finds a spot in here. We obviously brought up Cade Klubnik, and then Riley Leonard comes in as well. He did not have a game this past weekend, but they will be taking on Indiana in the first round of the college football playoff next weekend. So we're very excited for that game. But on the season, Riley Leonard, 2,000 yards, almost 2,100 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 5 picks, with 721 yards on the ground, with 14 rushing touchdowns there as well. Very, very solid season for Riley Leonard as we've seen him continue to develop as a passer. We know he's a good football player, and he's a gamer and all that kind of stuff. The teammates rally around him. Like, you love to see a quarterback be more than a quarterback. You want to see your quarterback be a football player from time to time. But Riley Leonard is that, and is still developing as a passer. I think if he continues to develop that, he has the arm talent to be a top option in the draft, but we just need to see more consistency from him from that position. So he was constantly in and around the top 10, but it was usually around that 10th spot. But he finds himself in the honorable mention section this week, and as we go into the top 10, number 10 is Kyle McCord. Keeps his spot from last week. Obviously had that really solid game against Miami in the final game of the regular season. On the season, as a whole, Kyle McCord, 4,300 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, 12 picks. Also had 3 rushing touchdowns in there as well. Kyle McCord, weirdly, given what we thought of him going into the season, with Ohio State replacing him with Will Howard, your opinions about who the right quarterback for this Ohio State team, that can vary from person to person. I saw a blog post the other day that actually said Ohio State was right by bringing in Will Howard, and I've seen other people on Twitter talking about Ohio State made the dumbest decision ever, replacing Kyle McCord with Will Howard, because Kyle McCord was not the problem at Ohio State. If you look at the numbers that Kyle McCord put up this year, minus that 5 interception game against Pitt, don't look at that game, but all the other games look at. Kyle McCord just made a lot of big-time throws throughout the course of the season, especially in that game against Miami. And Syracuse was a good team, finishing 9-3 on the season. I'm excited to see what he does in the bowl games. He did announce that he's going to be playing in the bowl game. I don't really know if I had too many concerns about that, because usually if you don't play in the bowl game, it's because you're considered to be a high draft pick. I'm not sitting here thinking that Kyle McCord's going to be a first-round draft pick in this coming draft. So yeah, I wasn't really holding my breath about him playing in the bowl game. But him and the Syracuse Orange will be taking on Washington State, who will be without their quarterback because he entered the transfer portal, actually, and the DirecTV Holiday Bowl, so that should be a very, very fun one down in San Diego. And number 9 on this list, those who have been crying out for this for weeks now can finally calm down because Dillon Gabriel comes in at number 9 on this list. And if you can tell by this, with Kyle McCord still being at number 10, Dillon Gabriel was going to be in this top 10 regardless. He was going to be either 9 or number 10, but with Nussmeier again dropping out of contention, I guess you could say Dillon Gabriel actually moves up a spot from where I was originally having him. But he put forth a very, very good game against Penn State in the Big Ten title game. 283 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. Also had 17 yards on the ground as well, a 45-37 win. And people, we talk about like Oregon's defense. You look at some of the players that they have on that defensive side of the ball. They have some ballers over there. So there were some questions regarding how Penn State would handle the oncoming onslaught from the Oregon Ducks defense. I mean, they lead the Big Ten in sacks. They had 40 sacks on the season. Like, they bring a lot of pressure. Dan Lanning, obviously coming from Georgia, being a defensive mind himself, he is going to prioritize that. But Oregon on offense, they're so freaking fast. You look at Johnson, you look at Stewart, you look at Jordan James in the backfield, Terrence Ferguson at tight end. They have a solid offensive line, and the experience at quarterback in Dillon Gabriel, who has seen literally everything. We talk about Oregon. Penn State's got a great defense as well, namely Abdul Carter, who may very well be the best overall edge rusher in the NFL draft, in college football in general. He is a freaking beast. He rocks that number 11 jersey like Micah Parsons. He is a problem. There were a couple times this game where Dillon Gabriel had to get outside the pocket and make throws on the move with Abdul Carter giving chase. Like, he made some big-time throws in this game for the Ducks. You look at his first touchdown of the game. We always talk about hitting receivers on a line. When they're open down the sideline, you rather hit them on a line than try to lead them because there's always going to be somebody coming over top. And he hits his receiver right on slows him down a little bit, I guess you could say. He didn't throw it back shoulder or anything, but he slows him down a little bit. And not only does he make the defender miss, he hurdles him on the way to the score from 20-something yards out, 28 yards out to put the Ducks up early in the game. And then you look a little bit later, you look at the first play of the second quarter, actually, with a defender from Penn State jumping in the face of Dillon Gabriel. When I say defender jumping in the face of Dillon Gabriel, it's Abdul Carter. And he managed to stay calm. A lot of quarterbacks wouldn't stay calm if someone as good as Abdul Carter was running right at their face right when they snapped the ball. He fakes it to the running back, hits Tez Johnson, I believe, for a nice 31-yard gain on 2nd and 12. Again, on the first play of the quarter, he finds a gap. The safety drops back. And he has that little gap. With Carter blitzing, he's just got to stay calm and get it around him. And then he's able to hit Johnson in between the gap between the safeties. And he throws it a little bit behind him as well, puts it more on him than leads him in front of him. So he's able to avoid the hit, and the safety's unable to come down and crash on the ball. I really like the throw from Gabriel, and a really nice, calm throw from Gabriel as well, despite the pressure coming in his face. And you talk about that experience again. That's what experience buys you. Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like we've been the biggest like Dillon Gabriel fanboys throughout the course of the season. I think he's put up very good numbers. I think he's done some good things for the Ducks this year. He's a very big reason on why the Ducks are where they are. But there were some moments where like the age thing did kind of wager, I guess you could say. And I'm not going to say here it was like, oh, he's a bad quarterback or anything. He's a bad prospect. He definitely wasn't that. I just didn't have him in the top 10 at that point. But we were playing a team like Penn State, and with a player like Abdul Carter, and you're able to stay calm. And there were more times throughout the course of the game where he was forced to stay calm in the pocket or outside the pocket. Like, you look at the start of the third quarter, Abdul Carter, again, giving chase to him around the edge, and he's able to deliver a strike between two Penn State defenders to Trayshawn Holden for 17 yards. You look at his touchdown to Tez Johnson a few plays later, gets around Abdul Carter, finds Tez Johnson in the middle of the field, who's able to make the first defender miss before finding his way to the end zone for a 48-yard touchdown. Like, just staying calm. That is such an important trait from a quarterback, and that just shows, again, the experience that Dillon Gabriel has at the position. On 3rd and 9, later in the game, he's able to step up in the pocket with the surrounding him. They have a little spy, or try to have a spy, and the spy is Abdul Carter. And they're trying to make sure that they keep Dillon Gabriel behind the line of scrimmage. But he steps up, he slides with the pressure, and he's able to find Tez Johnson, who's able to shake free of his defender for the eventual first down. And then later in the game, finding Terrence Ferguson for 20 yards on 4th and 2, standing tall in the pocket. Though he's not tall himself, he's able to stand tall and strong in the pocket and deliver a very nice ball to his tight end for the first down. You got your tight end matched up against a corner. You got to take advantage of that matchup in these types of situations to say, hey, make the strong catch, and Terrence Ferguson did. I think throughout the course of the game, with Penn State giving chase, even when Oregon was up 28-10, Penn State was still right behind them. They managed to claw their way back. The Ducks stayed with it. They did what they do best. They didn't turn the ball over. Gabriel's very good at making the smart throws, and Tez Johnson went freaking off. He had 4 touchdowns in this game. You look at Dylan Gabriel's best games of the season, you're looking at games against Ohio State and Penn State, and those are games where experience matters the most because you're playing 2 of the best teams in all of college football. 2 of the best defenses you're going to face in all of college football. You talk about Abdul Carter, you got Sawyer for Ohio State, JT on the other side for Ohio State. They've just got Tyleik Williams in the middle. There's going to be players wherever you go, but when you take on the best teams in your conference and come out victorious with you not making any real mistakes throughout the course of those games, that's very impressive, and that's where the experience, again, shows its flowers. And I think these 2 performances were very big from Gabriel. I think this performance in the Big Ten Championship game with the aforementioned 4 touchdowns was a very big thing for him and the Ducks. They're the number 1 seed in the playoff for a reason. They're the only undefeated team in college football at the FBS level for a reason. And Dylan Gabriel's just played very, very well and very consistent throughout the course of the season. And I'm excited to see what he does in the playoff and what the Ducks do in the playoff, despite them having a first-round bye. And you look at number 8 on this list, it's Jackson Dart. Did not play, but 25 touchdowns through the air, 3,800 yards as well. Good season for him. Curtis Rourke comes in at number 7, 27 touchdowns, 4 picks on the season, 2,800 yards. Did miss a game against Washington due to a thumb injury or was it a thumb or pinky? It was a finger injury, like an infection. It wasn't like a broken thumb or anything, but just a not very fun injury for Curtis Rourke. So he sat out that game. So his numbers could be even better than what they are right now, but very good season. Curt Cignetti won the Coach of the Year trophy, which is not shocking in the slightest, given how Indiana was not expected to do a whole lot of anything this year. And that's not just because that has nothing to do with Curt Cignetti and Curtis Rourke and all the players coming in. It's just because it's Indiana. No one expected Indiana to do anything because no one ever expects Indiana to do anything. You can have the most diehard Indiana fan out there. They won't even expect Indiana to do anything. That's just not their MO. That's not what they do. So with them going 11-1 this year, I don't care who they played. If you want to discredit their strength of schedule and stuff, no one thought Indiana was going to be 11-1 and win games the way they did, where they blew out everybody barring Michigan and Ohio State. That was their only 2 games of the season. So through a 12-game season, they had 2 games where they did not win a game by double digits. 2 of them. That's not what Indiana does. So I don't care what their strength of schedule was or who they played. They beat the shit out of everybody they played, barring 2 teams. And Curtis Rourke was a big reason for that. And you go to number 6 on this list. Quinn Ewers. Again, raised up 1 spot. It's not necessarily due to what he did in the game itself, but more again because Nussmeier's just out. 358 yards passing, did have a touchdown in the game with 2 interceptions in an overtime loss to Georgia. This just wasn't that fun of a game, if I'm being 100% honest with you. It just wasn't. Quinn Ewers almost threw an interception, I think the 2nd or 3rd play of the game. The ball, he tried to hit Matthew Golden on a slant. It got batted and almost got picked off. But then on the first drive, the football gods were like, no, you're throwing an interception on this drive. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You are throwing an interception, Mr. Ewers. You have to do so. And on that first drive of the game, a little later on 3rd and 9, he's just late on the throw. He's just late on it. He throws off his back foot a little bit, so he's kind of bracing for the pressure rather than driving through it. But with Quinn Ewers' injury history, it doesn't really surprise me with that. So the ball kind of floats in there rather than being zipped in there. Maybe the timing's fine. The timing might be fine on it. Again, I think a little bit of it is him leaning back on the ball. And the ball's more inside. He probably should have placed it to the outside. The ball ended up getting deflected up in the air, and it ended up being an easy interception. And that was to Matthew Golden again, I believe. But him and Golden would connect. A little bit later on 3rd and 13, he's able to hit him for a 50-yard gain to get them from the Georgia 41-yard line while he's throwing with his heels literally on the goal line. It's just a very solid throw. Again, he puts a lot on it. He's able to beat the safety over top, which is very, very key for him. I believe it was Malachi Starks as well, one of the top safeties in college football, will be the first safety taken in next year's draft. You just have to have those hole shots. Maybe the defender should have played it a little bit better, but I don't mind the throw from Ewers. It's not like an insane throw or anything, but I think it's a very, very solid throw down the far sideline for a nice 50-yard gain. He would have a 32-yard gain a little bit later on 3rd and 14. Again, rolling outside the pocket, delivering a throw on the run, kind of floating it in there and saying, hey, Golden, go up and make a play. Another 3rd down conversion. Again, just floating it up in there, telling his receiver to go up and get it. Matthew Golden's one of the bigger receivers Texas has, and he just goes out, rolls out, and just lobs it up for him. Just tosses it up to him for a nice play. Able to come down with the catch. And a little bit later in the game, like in the second quarter, firing one into Silas Bolden before the safety can come in. Like the safety's screaming down on Silas Bolden. He is waiting for Quinn Ewers to throw this ball. But between two other Georgia defenders and, again, the safety playing over top, he's able to fit it in there, drill it into Bolden for the nice 16-yard gain for the first down. This one was just on 2nd and 10. No big-time 3rd down conversion like the other two. But is able to fire it in there before the safety's able to crash down. That's great vision from Ewers, and also great job from Silas Bolden on being able to hold on to this ball because he took a freaking shot after he caught the ball. Absolute freaking shot from the Georgia safety on that play. But hey, again, respect to him for holding on to the ball. You would find Matthew Golden again a little bit later in the game, this one coming in the third quarter, throwing from kind of the near hash or far hash / kind of middle of the field, hitting Golden on the sideline on an out route. Again, we've talked about it before, how difficult these throws are in regards to throwing it from the far hash to the near sideline or vice versa, near hash to the far sideline. They're just not easy throws. They're a lot longer throws than I think a lot of people give it credit for, as if they're thrown off a little bit, most of the time they're getting returned the other way for 6. So with this throw from Ewers, with the corner not playing, or the nickel kind of playing back a little bit, it looks a little bit easier than what it probably is, but I still think it's a very solid throw from Ewers, and it helped pick up a decent amount of yards on the play as well. And then a little bit later, you go to the fourth quarter, Ewers will get picked off again. Again, not really stepping into the throw, just a bad throw. This one's a bad throw. He's late on the throw, and yeah, just an easy interception. Trying to hit Golden again, I believe, which was his favorite receiver throughout the course of the game. Stride for stride with the receiver the entire time the Georgia defender was. And when you're throwing on a hitch, if you're going to throw that ball, it's got to be to the outside. You cannot throw that ball back on the inside, and that's exactly what Ewers did. And he got a little bit of contact on the throw as well, so that probably didn't help anything. But as a whole, Ewers did not have the greatest game of all time. And I've seen some people on social media talk about how Texas needs to prepare to play Arch against Tennessee in their first-round playoff matchup. I don't know if we need to go that far yet, but as I've talked about numerous times before throughout the course of the season, Ewers did not really put up the season that I think a lot of people were expecting. Not me, but a lot of people were expecting from him going into the year. We talked about before the season, like you lose the likes of Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Jatavian Sanders, Jonathan Brooks. Like you lose key players on the opposite side of the ball. In your first year going to the SEC, yes, you were able to bring in Isaiah Bond, and you had Silas Bolden, you had Gunnar Helm there, you have solid off-the-line play as well, but you lost some very, very key pieces. All of those guys we mentioned were drafted between the first 3 rounds, if I'm not mistaken. I kind of forget where Jatavian Sanders was drafted, but still. I know Brooks, Adonai Mitchell, and Xavier Worthy were first 2-round guys. I'm giving the 3rd-round buffer for Sanders because I don't remember. I apologize. But you lose players like that, they're going to look at you and say, okay, now you lost some guys. How do you respond to that? And Ewers' numbers, if you just look at the individual numbers that he put up this year, 25 touchdowns, 9 picks. The rushing numbers weren't there like they were to a certain extent last year. But the numbers are just, they're fine. But if you just look at the play, and you look at games like the 5-touchdown game against Florida, or this game where he threw for over 300 yards against Georgia, they're not great games. Yes, there are a lot of yards. Yes, their stat sheet suffers and stuff like that. But I'm just not necessarily sold on Ewers. And if the draft started right now, I would say he's probably a 3rd-round draft pick. That's what my gut would tell me at this point in time. I've said this 1,000 times before. I don't necessarily think his arm is that spectacular. I think he's decently mobile. I think he can make some decent throws out there, but I'm just not 100% sold on him moving forward. So if he does decide to leave Texas, because Texas is pretty much forcing him out the door, whether that means he's going to the draft or he's entering the transfer portal, I don't know. If he goes to the portal, I mean, Oregon's right there. I mean, Oregon brought in Bo Nix and turned him around to turn him into not only a Heisman Trophy finalist, but turned him into a first-round draft pick. But when he was at Auburn, that didn't seem possible. And Quinn Ewers has the potential to do that, but we just haven't seen it fully stick together throughout his time at Texas. He's had numerous big-time injuries throughout his time there as well. Like, it just hasn't been a consistent thing for him throughout his time there. So if he does leave, I don't know what his future holds. I don't know what his future holds. I'm intrigued to see how he does against Tennessee in the first round of the playoff. It is at home, which I think is a very big thing for him, but I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think this year was that spectacular for him, and if he does decide to go, I would rather see him go to the portal than the draft, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Am I being harsh? I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I am being a little too harsh, but it stays consistent from what we've said throughout his time at Texas. As I haven't really changed my tune in regards to that entire thing, but yeah, not the greatest game for him, but Texas still in the playoff. They got a game against Tennessee. I expect them to win that game, but yeah, we'll have to see what the future holds for him. That's for sure. Carson Beck comes in at number 5. We didn't see anything from him. We didn't see squat from Carson Beck in this game. He got injured right before halftime. Didn't really make any notable throws in this game. He went 7 for 13 with 56 yards. Didn't have a touchdown. Didn't have a pick. It ends his streak of nice touchdowns. I think he had 11 touchdowns through his last 3 games or something, but also didn't throw an interception, which is positive. And I saw some people on Twitter talk about the offense looked better with Gunnar Stockton in there. I don't know if I would go that far, because if you look at Beck throughout the course of the season, it's not crazy to suggest that he would have put up a lot better numbers had he played in the second half. You look at some of the games he's had, if not some, if you look at most of the games Carson Beck has taken part in this season, you're looking at like games, even against Alabama, where he had the 4 turnovers and the safety and stuff like that. He still managed to turn it around in the second half and put forth a solid effort in the second half, despite struggling immensely in the first half. Like, even some of the games where they've won against, like, Tennessee and Georgia Tech, he's played better in the second half. He grows into the game most of the time. Obviously, the game against UMass, he threw 4 touchdowns at halftime and stuff like that. I understand that stuff, but he usually grows into the game. So I think if he hadn't got hurt, I think he would have played much, much better, put up much better numbers than what he did in just the one half that we saw. And he's obviously missing, per reports, he's missing Georgia's first-round playoff game, which is between, I think, either Indiana or Notre Dame. I don't remember the exact game that they're taking part in. They do have a first-round bye. They are in the Sugar Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, missing him for that first-round playoff game could prove very costly. But Gunnar Stockton, solid enough quarterback. A very commendable performance throughout the course of the game. The interception in the second half following that second Quinn Ewers interception was not great, but throughout the course of that game, he put up a very solid performance. He took some massive licks in the game as well. With another week or 2 or 3 weeks under his belt, taking reps with the starters, I think they should be fine with him in there. But Beck, I would imagine he's going to go pro. I would imagine so. I don't think he has any years of eligibility left, but I didn't think Cade McNamara had any years of eligibility left either, and he still found a way to transfer. So anything's possible in this new age of college football, I guess you could say. But moving up to number 4, we have Jalen Milroe. Didn't play, but 35 touchdowns on the year, 15 passing, 20 rushing touchdowns. Also, 10 interceptions, which is not necessarily the most ideal, but Jalen Milroe's got a very high ceiling. He's got one of the strongest arms in the draft class. He's obviously the most mobile quarterback in this draft class, the most electrifying quarterback in this draft class. There just needs to be that development in his passing. And we've talked about it before the season started. Jalen Milroe, as a deep ball thrower, is one of the best in the draft. That short intermediate game still needs to be developed, and that can come in time. You could see him being, I wouldn't be shocked if he was a first-round draft pick. It wouldn't shock me in the slightest. Just needs to sit him behind somebody that can kind of calm him down a little bit, and then he could be an absolute terror at the next level. And I talked about this before, but there's been people that say, why, if Anthony Richardson was a top 4 pick, why can't Jalen Milroe? And I think the main reason behind that, like, they're not one-for-one prospects. I think that kind of gets lost on people as well. Just because Jalen Milroe is raw as a passer does not mean he's the same type of prospect as Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson's 6'5", 250 pounds. Can run a 4.4, literally, and throw a ball 100 yards. Like, there's so much potential there, and you didn't really see a whole lot of him. Like, he has, I think, like 22 career starts. That's high school, college, and NFL. Like, he's extremely raw. I think that the unknown is what was so enticing about Anthony Richardson. We've seen more of Jalen Milroe, so I think that unknown thing with him definitely shot him up draft boards. I really liked Anthony Richardson at Florida too. I really liked him there. I thought there was a lot of potential in there. I mean, again, 6'5", 250 rocket arm, runs a 4.4. Like, there's so much potential there. And it's not just the 4.4. He has great football speed as well. There is a difference. I'm not going to explain it here, but you know the difference. If you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. But Milroe has a lot of potential in there. I don't think top 4 pick worthy, but I would not be shocked at all if he was a first-round pick. Number 3 on this list is Drew Aller. Drew Aller comes in at number 3. 20 for 39, 226, 3 tuds, 2 interceptions with 54 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown in there as well. Do not look at the stats, because I know a lot of people out there will say he went 20 of 39. How are you going to say he was that good in the Big Ten championship game? But like we talked about before with Oregon, or with Dylan Gabriel, Oregon's defensive line is one of the best in all of college football. They have required 40 sacks on the season. They got 1 sack in this game, and that was against Penn State's backup quarterback. It was not against Aller. Aller's ability to slide around the pocket, stepping up, making plays on the run with people dragging on, and like his touchdown on 4th down, players were dragging on his jersey and still fired it. 3rd and 15, to be able to fire it downfield with the defense all around him. Picking up 20 yards on the ground, picking up a 7-yard rushing touchdown. His pocket mobility in this game was insanely impressive, and some of the throws he was able to make were also insanely impressive. And these are the type of plays we've seen from Aller throughout the course of the season. But this was the national spotlight, which Penn State really hasn't been on that much apart from the game against Ohio State. Like, they had the game against UCLA, it was on Big Noon kickoff and stuff, but from the people I talked to, it doesn't really sound like a lot of people really watched Penn State play this year. But Aller's a special talent with an absolute hose for an arm. And he's decently athletic. I'm not going to sit here and say he's Jalen Milroe or even Riley Leonard for that matter, but he can make plays on the ground when required. And you saw throughout the course of this game, but you look at early in the game, 3rd and 15, firing it into Trey Wallace for 16 yards. That's what we love to see. You look at hitting Tyler Warren on a slant, getting the ball out quick. Like we talked about Gabriel with the defender coming in his face, he's able to stay calm, pump fake, get the defender off his feet, and fire it into to Tyler Warren for the 1st down. Like, you pull the linebacker crashes in, you've got to hit the tight end right there because that's the gap in the defense. And Aller hits it. He does have to pump fake again with the defender right in his face, but he's able to fire it in there, get the ball out quick. The interceptions weren't necessarily the greatest of all time. You look at his first interception of the game coming when they're at the 10-yard, or not the 10-yard lane. What yard lane were they starting at? Like the 11-yard line or something like that. And he fires it right in the defender. He throws it behind his receiver. If it's in front of him, I don't think it's a bad throw. But anybody could say that. If the ball's not intercepted, then it's probably a good throw. Yeah, thanks for that one, Logan. But just trying to do, I don't even say want to try and do a little too much. He does a good job initially, like getting the defender's focus to the left side. Like, his focus is to the left. So you're trying to slide the defenders that way before firing down the middle of the field. Because if you're looking down the middle of the field, they're just going to stay in the middle. You're not going to have any holes in there. So if you look to that left side of the formation, you're trying to drift them over to that side. And he does that well, but the throw is just behind. It's just behind. That's the problem. It was almost returned for a pick 6. Jordan James would score a play later, The Oregon Ducks would go up 28-10. And down 28-10, I'm not going to lie, I thought the game was over. I thought it was. Like, usually you don't see teams claw back, especially coming off plays like that. Momentum is all in Oregon's side at that point. But they're able to claw their way back. That's what we like to see. He had a nice 22-yard rope touchdown to Amari Evans as well from 22 yards out. Again, on a freaking rope. Just fires it in there to his wide receiver. He gets behind the corner. He gets behind the safety, finds a gap in the secondary, and just fires it in there. You look at his 7-yard touchdown as well. Linebacker commits to Katron Allen on the run play, and he just powers through a few defenders to get in the end zone, to pile it through the end zone. And then you look a little bit later in the game, picking up 22 yards on the ground. Defender coming around the edge. He tries to he fakes it to the outside. Or hold on. Yeah, he fakes the pitch. Tries to get the defender to buy on the pitch. He doesn't. He just screams to the backfield, and Aller's able to read his blocks well and pick up a good amount of yards on the ground. Like, he's not, again, the greatest athlete of all time, but you can make plays on the run when required. You look at his touchdown pass to Trey Wallace as well. 14 yards out, 4th and 10. Defender literally grabbing on his jersey. No way he can really get this ball out with a realistic base or anything. He's just trying to get it out as quick as possible, or just trying to get it out. And with 2 Oregon defenders on Wallace, he's able to fire it in there for the score. It's a great throw in an insanely tight window, but that's the kind of throws Aller has made throughout the course of the season. Now, the second interception, it came at a really rough time. Really rough time. They're trying to get back in the game. They stopped Oregon. I think they forced them to go 3 and out. It's 45-37. They went for 2 after they scored their last touchdown, which I'm not necessarily, or the touchdown to get to the 30. I don't know if I was necessarily the biggest fan of that, but the interception, trying to go down the sideline, you got your receiver on an island, and throws down the field and gets picked off. Receiver and corner, stride for stride down the field. That one's got to be a little bit more back shoulder than leading him up the field. And that's what caused the interception. But as for the game in general, I thought Aller played spectacularly. Given the situation in the Big Ten championship game against one of the best pass rushers in college football, not just the Big Ten, but in college football in general, Aller stepped up. He made big-time throws when his team needed it. He made big-time plays on the ground when his team needed it. He avoided sacks. He just did everything you want to see from your starting quarterback, and I thought he boosted up a lot. And if you just look at the stats, this is the fear of box score watching. If you just look at the stats and go, 20 of 39, 226, you would go, that's probably not the greatest. But no, Aller put on a freaking show, and I'm excited to see what this leads for him going into the draft process, even further into the draft process. Maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But moving up to number 2 and 1, it's obviously Shedeur Sanders at number 2. Cam Ward, the 2024 Davey O'Brien Award winner, at number 1. And that is our Week 15 quarterback prospecting. So a quick recap. The honorable mention section reads as follows. We have Will Howard from Ohio State, Cade Klubnik, Haynes King, Kevin Jennings, and Riley Leonard. Number 10, we have Kyle McCord. Number 9, we have Dylan Gabriel. Let's go over the bowl games as well. Kyle McCord, we obviously decided the Holiday Bowl against Washington State. Dylan Gabriel, an Oregon first-round bye in the college football playoff ranks, number 1 seed, undefeated season, all that stuff. Jackson Dart comes in at number 8. Him and Ole Miss will be playing Duke in the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl. Curtis Rourke comes in at number 7. Him and Indiana will be taking on Notre Dame in the first round of the college football playoff at Notre Dame, which will be exciting. Texas and Quinn Ewers comes in at number 6. They'll be taking on Clemson at home in the first round of the playoff. And then we got Georgia taking on nobody. They have a first round bye in the playoff with Carson Beck coming in at number 5. Jalen Milroe comes in at number 4 with Alabama taking on Michigan in the Relia Quest Bowl. Drew Aller comes in at number 3. Him and Penn State will be taking on SMU at Beaver Stadium in the first round of the playoff. And then Shedeur Sanders comes in at number 2 with him and the Buffaloes taking on BYU in the Alamo Bowl. 2 conference teams, 2 Big 12 teams playing each other. I don't remember the last time that's happened, but it happened this time. And then Cam Ward at number 1 with the Hurricanes taking on Iowa State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. That's all I've got for you for this week's edition of the 2025 Quarterback Prospect. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did not, I sincerely apologize. Try to be better next time. Make sure, again, to check out all the different links down below. Check out the blog post as well. You can find more in-depth analysis on the blog post. I've been Logan Blackman. I hope you enjoyed as always, and I will see you guys later. Peace.